Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Today we've got the hood up on the hauler project. So we're going to try to get some of our new Autometer gauges wired up, plumbed in, and hopefully we'll get all that going today. So stick around. We're going to start off with the coolant temperature gauge. I've already got the sending unit here prepped and ready to be installed. I'm going to be removing this plug here, if you can see it down here, in the water neck. We'll pull this plug out and just install this sending unit to replace it. Anyways, let's get started. Now we will lose a little bit of coolant here, but as long as you keep the cap in place, you shouldn't lose that much as long as you work quickly. And there we go. It's in here. And that should be good for that. Now I'll clean up this little bit of a mess I've made, and I'll top that coolant back off here in a little bit. Next up, I think I will try to get the boost reference hooked up. Now on my rig, on the hauler here, we've got a port down here in the charge pipe. It's usually meant for testing the charge piping for leaks, but it will be a perfect point to get a boost reference from. So I'll go get the tools and get that plug out of there and see what we got to work with. Okay, let's see if we can get this plug out of this pipe. Oh yeah, no problem there. The question is, do I have the right adapter? And I do, so that'll make this really easy. Go on and add a little bit of thread sealer to the line adapter. Thread it in here. I'll grab a tool and snug that up real quick. Again, dab a thread sealer on this fitting here. And we'll get it right down into this port. There. Be an easy place to get a good boost reference from. This is our plastic 1/8 inch reference line, and it just uses compression fittings. It's a pretty simple little setup. Oop. So we'll get it all straightened out. I'll hook it up on this end first, and then later on, once I drill the hole through the cowl here, or through the firewall here, I'll run all the wiring and this reference line together into the cab. Be sure to drop this little piece here. It'll just make your day great. And before you snug that down, be sure to push that line all the way down in there. Make sure it's seated. And this does not need a whole lot of force put on it. Just snug it up. There's very little pressure that's going to be applied to this line. And it's easy to break these fittings. So now I can take this line and route it up this direction. I can run it through this clamp here to keep it out of the way of everything that moves. Keep it from getting pinched or damaged. I think I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab the tools and everything I need to go on and drill and tap the manifold for the exhaust temperature probe, and I'll be right back. And I'm back. I got the tools together to drill this manifold for the 1/8 inch MPT fitting needed for the exhaust gas temperature probe. Okay. I'm going to attempt to drill this manifold right here. That'll let me run the wiring harness up along this side, and it should be pretty easy access. So first up, let's see if I can get my drill down in here. Oh yeah. So I'm gonna coat the tip of this drill bit with a little bit of grease, keep any metal shavings from dropping down in the manifold. Excuse the noise, my boy's out playing around on his little tractor. But yeah, the grease will keep any shavings from dropping down the manifold. Just take your time and go slow with it. If a couple do drop down in the manifold, it's not going to be a huge deal. They will blow right out the exhaust when the engine starts. So let's see what we can do here. And there we go. So we'll knock these metal shavings away from the hole. And I've done a few of these, so I've got a 1/8 inch tap that's been kind of permanently stuck in this socket. As you can see, we've got our hole drilled and tapped. Clean up some of this grease here. Wipe this out of the way. And we have our exhaust gas temperature probe adapter. So I'm going to use a little bit of red thread locker on this. I'm not worried about it if it never comes out. I'd actually prefer it. You can see it's got a little set screw here that holds the tip of this probe down into the manifold. So this doesn't ever have to come out. So go on and put that down. And now we will untangle this probe. I'll go on and lay this up here out of the way. Now I need to back that set screw out, whichever side it is on. Add a little thread locker to that too, because I don't want this set screw backing out. And I will slide this down until it touches the bottom of the manifold, and then come back up just a bit to roughly center the tip of the probe in the exhaust flow, or the exhaust stream. Okay. Now, I will just zip tie this harness up out of the way, run it along with this wire harness here. Well, now I'm going to figure out just where and how I'm going to run this through the firewall. So I'll figure that out. I'll be right back. The manufacturer of the bus made this a little easier than I anticipated, so I won't have to drill any holes, as we've got a grommet right here that's got plenty of extra room to pass more wiring through. So while off camera, I went on and ran a line for the coolant temp sensor. I just ran it right alongside the EGT probe wiring, and I'll go on and tuck these in a short piece of loom and run them through this grommet into the cabin, and I'll show you where they come out. Okay. Now, we'll go inside the bus and see how we're going to handle things in there. Let's take a look down here and see what we're working with now. Okay. Our wiring came in right here. So it'll be easy enough to tuck right up in here, run it over, and up through the back of this panel with a couple holes and a couple grommets to our gauges. That should make for a really clean and a really simple installation. Pull this out, and we're losing screws, but that's okay. I'll go on and get underneath here and get all this wiring tucked away. It's kind of tight spaces, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see very much. So I'll be right back. Now I got all that wiring tucked in and ran back through this dash here. Let me show you what we've got. Oh man! Down here, here's our wire loom coming through the firewall. If you can see that, it comes through inside this panel, and now we have our exhaust temperature probe wiring, our boost reference, and our coolant temperature wiring ran up through this console. So now all that's left is to punch a couple holes behind these gauges, add our grommets, and run the wiring up through that console, hook everything up, and should be good to go. Now, I have not ran wiring for the oil pressure gauge or the transmission temperature gauge. The oil pressure gauge, I'm going to cheat a little bit, I think. I'm going to find out. My bus has a mechanical factory oil pressure gauge. Problem is that while running down the road, you can't see it, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is there is a bulkhead fitting up underneath this dash. You probably can't see it, but there's a hose for that gauge running through the back, running through the firewall and up to the back of the gauge cluster. So I'm going to disconnect that line at the bulkhead fitting that comes through the firewall. I'm going to tee that fitting and put my oil pressure sender for my Autometer gauge there, as well as that mechanical gauge. So I'll have both gauges hooked up all the time. Kind of redundant, not really a reason for it, but it'll just make it easier on me to tap into this new electric oil pressure sender instead of having to pull something off the engine down below and figure it out down there. This will make it a lot easier. So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna cut off here for a little bit and see if I can find some grommets to finish up this console. Well, day 2 of our gauge installation project is here, so let's see if we can get this buttoned up. Well, we're making progress slowly but surely. I've got our boost gauge here, and got the little wiring harness made for the light, and got the adapter fitting on for the reference line. So I'm going to fish that reference line through the back of this pod here. And I'm going to cut it off a bit long to leave me a little extra room to work. But I think that'll work right there. There we go. Now I'm going to slip the nut on the line, slip the little ferrule on the line, and go on and push it into the back of the gauge. And just snug it up a little bit. And that should be plenty. So I'll fish these wires back through the back here. And that should cover that. So, well, one pretty well down, and 4 to go. Well, we're just about done wiring these gauges up, and I tell you, it's been a pain. I'll give you a quick shot of just how tight these gauge cups are that I'm using. Now, here's what we're having to do on the back side of these gauges, and we're running real tight to the back, and even that is really tight fitting everything into these gauge pods, which these are Autometer gauge pods as well, so it's kind of strange that they don't fit very well. But let's see here, I'll fish this back to the back here. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. And squeeze everything in there. And see, it still fights wanting to go all the way back in there. So they're snug, but they'll do the trick. So all I've got left to do is run this cinder wire up to this one, and then hook up the ignition hots and the grounds for these 4, and I've got the wiring for the pyrometer already ran down here. So get everything tied in real quick and get it tested and go from there. And here I'll show you the little cheat I was talking about as far as getting this oil pressure gauge hooked up. You can see, I'm going to put some pictures in here. You can see that the bulkhead fitting coming through the firewall, that is the oil pressure reference line. It's a mechanical, for the mechanical gauge on the dash. So I just teed into this line and worked perfectly. So didn't have to tie into anything on the engine side. Everything's kind of tight down there anyways, so this worked out really well. Well, that wraps up our gauge installation pretty well. Still got to figure out what to do with the transmission temperature probe, whether I'm going to put it in the pan or get an adapter for the cooler outlet line on the transmission. I'm not sure yet which route I want to go, but that'll come in the future. As you can see, this wasn't very complicated. It was time consuming, but not too bad to do overall. We've got a lot more to come, so please subscribe. And thank you for watching.